$7.5 billion. That is what the United States Navy spent on 3 ships. Not 3 fleets. Not 3 squadrons. 3 individual destroyers. Each one costs more than the entire annual budget of some countries. Each one took over a decade to build, and when the first one finally went to sea, its own engines failed. Not under enemy fire, not in a storm. The most expensive destroyer ever built by any navy in human history broke down in the Panama Canal, a shipping lane that cargo vessels cross every single day without incident. The Pentagon looked at that result, then ordered 10 more ships. You paid for this, not metaphorically, literally. Every April, a portion of your federal taxes flows into a defense budget that just spent $7.5 billion on warships that couldn't reach the fight. The price of your groceries, your gas, your electricity bill, all of it feeds a system that bought a gun with no bullets, a ship with no reliable engine, and called it the future of naval warfare. The question is not why this happened. The question is who benefits when it does, because once you see the answer, you cannot unsee it. Picture the USS Zumwalt from 100 feet above the water. The shape alone stops you cold. Every warship you have ever seen rises vertically from the waterline, walls of steel going straight up. The Zumwalt does the opposite. Its sides angle inward as they rise, like a pyramid that learned to float. No flat surfaces anywhere, no right angles. The radar signature of this ship, longer than 2 football fields end to end, is smaller than a fishing boat. From an enemy radar screen, it simply does not exist. Stand on the dock next to it and feel what $2.5 billion of steel actually looks like. The hull rises above you like the side of an office building, rivets the size of your closed fist. The deck stretches so far forward it disappears into haze. 2 gun turrets sit forward, each one housing a cannon capable of firing a GPS-guided shell the size of a grown man over 60 miles inland. That range puts targets deeper than most aircraft can safely operate. The wake behind this ship at full speed looks like a small river being dragged backward through the ocean. It was, on paper, the most dangerous surface combatant ever designed. In 2005, the Navy ordered 32 of them. It was going to replace everything. Here is where you need to understand one number, not a technical specification, an economic one. The number is 32. That is how many Zumwalt-class destroyers the Navy originally planned to buy, and that number is the entire story. When you manufacture anything at scale, cars, iPhones, warships, the cost per unit falls as the order grows. The factory runs more efficiently, the suppliers lower their prices, the specialized workers get faster. Economists call this economy of scale. You experience it every time you buy the large size instead of the small. The first unit is always the most expensive. The 32nd is dramatically cheaper. The Navy ordered 32. Then the cost estimates came back. Each ship was running significantly over budget, so the Navy cut the order to 24, then to 7, then finally to 3. And here is what nobody explained publicly at the time. Every time they cut the order, the cost per ship went up. Because now the specialized steel, the proprietary electronics, the unique systems, all had to be amortized across fewer hulls. Cutting the order to save money made each ship more expensive, which triggered another cut, which raised the price again. Inside the defense industry, this loop has a name. They call it the death spiral. The Zumwalt went around that loop 3 times. By the end, 3 ships at $2.5 billion each. Total program cost, over $22 billion for 3 destroyers. And then the guns ran out of ammunition. The Zumwalt's 155mm advanced gun system was designed to give the Navy affordable land attack firepower. The word affordable is important here. It was the entire justification for the weapon. When the program shrank to 3 ships, the cost per round for that gun climbed to $800,000. Not per salvo, per single shell. One pull of the trigger, $800,000. A Tomahawk cruise missile costs less. The gun that was supposed to be cheaper than missiles became more expensive than missiles. So the Navy quietly stopped buying ammunition for it. 2 massive gun turrets, sitting silent and empty on a $2.5 billion warship, because the Pentagon could not justify the cost of bullets. Commander James Robb, a surface warfare officer who served aboard the program's developmental phase, described the moment the ammunition decision was announced to crews as the kind of silence you hear when a room full of professionals realizes simultaneously that something has gone deeply, structurally wrong. Not an accident, a policy decision. The guns were not broken. They were abandoned. Now here is the part that will make you stop and read this sentence again. The company that builds the advanced gun system is BAE Systems. The company that manufactures the specialized ammunition, the rounds that reached $800,000 each, is also effectively BAE Systems through a subsidiary. The company that designed the propulsion system that failed in the Panama Canal is General Dynamics. The company that built the hull is General Dynamics Bath Iron Works, located in Bath, Maine, a facility that employs thousands of workers in a congressional district whose representative sits on the House Armed Services Committee. General Dynamics also builds the Virginia-class submarine, the Abrams tank, the Stryker armored vehicle, and the Gulfstream private jet used by executives who manage the contracts for all of the above. This is not corruption. Corruption is easier to prosecute. This is structure. Over 50 years, the United States defense industrial base consolidated from dozens of competing firms into 5 dominant contractors. Those contractors are now so large, employ so many people across so many congressional districts, and are so deeply embedded in the budget process that canceling any program, regardless of performance, triggers a political chain reaction. Factories close, union jobs disappear, votes are lost. The Zumwalt program employed workers in Maine, Washington, California, and Virginia simultaneously. When the order shrank, those facilities did not close. They restructured, they lobbied, and then they won the contracts for the follow-on work. Modifications, upgrades, and most recently, the complete gutting and rebuilding of all 3 Zumwalt hulls to carry hypersonic missiles instead. The ship that couldn't fight is being rebuilt into something else. The contract to rebuild it went to the same companies that built it the first time, at a cost of $3 billion per hull. $3 billion to fix a $2.5 billion ship. Total investment in a single vessel, approaching $6 billion. The Pentagon calls this leveraging sunk costs. You would call it something else. But here is what you need to understand about that rebuild, because this is where the story turns in a direction nobody anticipated. The Zumwalt's hull, the design that failed at scale, the ship that broke down in the canal, is genuinely the best platform currently in the American inventory for the one weapon that changes everything. The conventional prompt strike hypersonic missile, a weapon that can reach a target 1,700 miles away in under 15 minutes, faster than any existing air defense system can reliably intercept. The Zumwalt's integrated electric drive system, the same propulsion architecture that failed operationally, produces enough power to support directed energy weapons and hypersonic launch systems that no conventional destroyer can run. The failure created the only hull in the fleet capable of hosting the next generation of weapons. The mistake became the foundation, accidentally, expensively, but genuinely. Now look across the Pacific while that sinks in. China launched more warships last year than the entire current U.S. Navy surface fleet combined. Not more capable ships, more ships. The plan, the People's Liberation Army Navy, now operates the largest naval force on Earth by hull count. Their Type 055 destroyer is newer than the Arleigh Burke, cheaper per unit, and being produced at a rate American shipyards cannot match. China operates 7 major naval shipyards simultaneously. Some of them are larger than any single facility in the United States. The United States has 2 shipyards capable of building nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. 2. If either one faces a labor disruption, a fire, or a supply chain failure, and shipyard fires happen, Bath Iron Works had one in 2020, the production line for the most powerful surface warship ever constructed stops completely. There is no backup facility. There is no surge capacity. The industrial infrastructure that won the Cold War was dismantled through the 1990s as budgets shrank and consolidation accelerated. Rebuilding it would take 15 years minimum and political will that has not materialized in any budget cycle this decade. This is not a weapons gap. It is an industrial gap. And industrial gaps do not close because a president gives a speech or a general testifies before Congress. They close when factories are built, workers are trained, supply chains are rebuilt from the ground up, over a decade or more, with consistent funding that survives every election cycle in between. The Zumwalt will eventually deploy with hypersonic missiles. It will be genuinely dangerous. It will represent a real capability that no other surface ship can replicate. The hull that failed is becoming the hull that matters. But the path from drawing board to deployment took 22 years, cost over $22 billion, produced 3 ships where 32 were planned, and was saved only by the accidental discovery that the failure had created the right power architecture for a weapon that didn't exist yet when the ship was designed. You cannot plan for that. You cannot replicate it. And you absolutely cannot build a navy on it. The 10 new destroyers the Pentagon is now buying are Arleigh Burke Flight 3 variants, a design first drawn in 1988, now in its 3rd major upgrade cycle. Each one costs $2.3 billion. Each one uses the same basic radar and missile architecture that has been evolving since Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The Navy calls this low-risk procurement. The defense industry calls it guaranteed revenue. Because a Flight 3 Burke requires the same suppliers, the same steel, the same electronics, and the same maintenance contracts as every Burke before it. The industrial base knows exactly how to build it. The cost is predictable. The schedule is manageable. And nothing about it closes the gap with what China is launching right now. Think about what that means the next time you fill your gas tank. Every cent above the baseline price you pay at the pump has a component that traces back to energy security, to shipping lanes, to the naval balance of power in the Pacific and the Gulf. The United States is spending $23 billion on 10 ships that were designed 4 decades ago, while the country with the most direct incentive to challenge American naval dominance is launching new hulls at a pace not seen since the Second World War. The defense budget is the largest discretionary line item in the federal government, larger than education, larger than infrastructure, larger than healthcare research, and a significant portion of it flows through 5 companies that employ lobbyists, fund congressional campaigns, and rotate executives through the Pentagon's acquisition offices on a cycle so reliable it has its own nickname, the revolving door. This is not a conspiracy. It is an operating system. It runs regardless of which party controls the White House. It ran through Democratic administrations and Republican ones. It ran through peace and through war. It runs right now. The USS Zumwalt is moored in San Diego, its useless gun turrets removed, new launch tubes being installed for missiles that will make it genuinely lethal. The most expensive mistake in naval history is becoming something real, accidental, expensive, necessary. The machine does not build weapons for war. It builds weapons for the machine. And sometimes, not always, not reliably, not by design, something dangerous comes out the other side. The question is whether you can build a navy that way, and whether you have the time left to find out.